This is the 2020 Momentum Medical Scheme Attakwas Extreme, presented by Biogen. The Hell of the South, a 121-kilometre race from the Klein Karoo through the Attakwas Kloof to the coast. Taking place on the 18th of January, it marked the start of the South African mountain biking season. It proved who had put in the necessary mileage over the festive season, providing a stern test for elite and amateur riders alike.
It's a grueling race apparently. I believe it's one of the toughest one-stage races, so I'm quite excited and very lucky with the weather.
I enjoy the race, I enjoy taking and punishing. It's a really nice, tough race. Something to train for in December.
Expecting to bleed through my eyes. The weather's looking good though, so I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, apparently it's one of the toughest ones in the country, so I'm keen to give it a try.
We never get off the bike, we ride all the way. So they said on this one definitely we're gonna be pushing the bikes. So I'm looking forward to pushing my bike.
Starting under clear skies, but with wet weather ahead, the elite men's field lined up with trepidation. Like the amateur riders who would be starting after them, the likes of Peter de Tooy, Matt Beers and the double defending champion Matthijs Bierkes were unsure of their form. Were they ready for the Hell of the South? The time for questioning ended as the starters' hooter sounded. The season and the race were underway. Only legs, lungs, skills and tactics mattered for the next 4 or so hours. Jacques Jansen van Rensburg, returning to mountain biking after racing on the road for the best part of a decade, put in an early attack, while Philip Bass of Paiga Eurosteel set a steady tempo in the peloton behind. Having raced for Team Dimension Data, Jansen van Rensburg is no stranger to tough days on the bike, though things have changed somewhat in mountain biking while he was racing on the road.
Oh, I can remember when I rode Attakwas, I think it was maybe close to 9 years ago. We still rode 26 inch. I rode Hardtail, the Cannondale Flash. It's excited to be back racing mountain biking after 9 years, and really looking forward to the race. It's going to be a race of attrition, not so much with the heat, but definitely about fueling from the start as well, because I think it's just as hard racing in the cold and wet conditions as in the heat.
German Karl Platt had come to South Africa for warm weather racing.
Yeah, it's a good start into the season with the Attakwas, because yeah, it's a love-hate for the Attakwas. It's super hard and your body's still not used for the racing, but it's fun, nice people, great atmosphere, and always great to come back. The whole race, it's unique, so you have to experience it, because in the beginning it's like really rough and hard, especially in the Attakwas, and the last part depends on the wind, on the weather. If it gets like super hot, then you fight your brain, yourself, everything. It's quite a long race. I mean, 121 kilometers doing on full gas. It's a really hard one.
The UCI women's field for the 2020 race may not have boasted the depth of the men's, but the strength was equally impressive. The defending champion Jolande de Villiers was up against Jenny Stennehaag, Sarah Hill, Amy McDougall, Sabine Spitz, Robin de Groot, Barbara Benko, Teresa Ralph and Laura Stark. In 2019, the women's race came down to a 3-rider sprint, from which Oudtshoorn local Jolande de Villiers emerged victorious.
The experience counts quite a lot, because you must know where to go and not to go, and especially on this long race, you must just be careful, otherwise it's going to bite you.
It's always difficult to say, and I don't really focus that much on what the other people are doing, but Jolande's always strong. She won last year. Robin is in a really good form as it looks, and Amy was strong in the end of last year, so anyone can really be up there. Barbara Benko, international rider, so there's a lot of really good, strong girls here.
121 kilometres on the cards, it was essential for the riders to keep consuming calories throughout. Getting back to racing after the close season is always a bit of a shock to the system, as Wessel Botha explained.
Yeah, we've all been training by ourselves, so first race of year, first time testing the form, so yeah, it'll be a bit of a surprise, but I think we all had some good December training and all in good form, so it should be good. It is my first Attakwas, so I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, how hard the race is, so yeah, we'll just see. I think we'll be in for a good day.
The rocky technicality of the route made gear choices key. Keegan Bontekoning was the first of many puncture victims. In fact, he would end up pushing his bike after double puncturing later. Jaco Venter of First Move Sport, making his debut in the event, also suffered multiple punctures. The first key point of the race is often the rocky climb, located at the 30-kilometre mark. Riders who get caught too far back in the pace line tend to lose contact with the leaders there, especially when the train of dismounts concertinas down the group, as first one rider, then another and another is forced into running their bike. Caught behind, Matt Beers was forced to chase. Getting caught behind a split can leave riders with a manic chase back towards the front group, a feat Beers managed with ease. The group that reformed contained the likely winners. Southern Cape local Gert Haynes set the pace. Also present were Philip Bass and Matthijs Bierkes, Matt Beers and Wessel Botha, Tristan de Lange, Nicole Carstens and Michael Olsen. After near misses in the past, Haynes was eager to make 2020 his year. That group remained together for the next 20 kilometres to the tech zone and water point at Sonop. The farm store provides a service area where the elite riders can receive aid from their mechanics and soigneurs before taking on the rigours of the Attakwas Kloof. A second group on the trails had formed behind the leaders. They were led by NAD Pro MTB's Nico Bell. Behind that, the field was strung out, as those recovering from earlier setbacks like Keegan Bontekoning fought their way back into contention. Tim Hammond, Peter de Toy and Sepif van Wyk were suffering in unison, while Jan Vittar had to replace a broken pedal before heading into the Kloof. The weather ahead looked treacherous.
Just before the Attakwas Kloof, it was completely dry, like bone dry, Karoo, and then as soon as we started, we did the first climb into the Attakwas, and then it just, yeah, it dramatically changed. Like everything was wet, it was slippery, the rocks, yeah, there was a lot of punches. Yeah, and it was pretty much just survival at that point, and just conserving your bike and eating and drinking. You forget to drink and stuff when it's cold, so you're still expending the energy. So yeah, that was a big one.
The ascent from Sonop into the Attakwas Kloof leaves no place to hide. It tests every rider in the field's mettle, from the elite racers battling for the overall title to the first-timers just aiming to finish. Meanwhile, in Groot Brakrivier at Pine Creek Resort, riders were lining up for the 53-kilometre adventure, which is the Momentum Medical Scheme Attakwas Mini presented by Biogen. They would start in the rain, which never abated on the coastal side of the mountains all day. But at least they were prepared for the conditions, unlike some of the long-distance riders. The Mini features a scenic but challenging route. It's no normal short-distance race, but it does provide young mountain bikers with a taste of marathon distance racing and prepares them to take on the full 121-kilometre race in years to come. Young Benino Hans placed third behind fellow Spurs Schools League riders Jean Duplessis and Nico Bester, while Matthew Lepan finished fourth. Cronje Bierkes was the first 15 to 16-year-old across the line. In the main race, the top amateur riders were picking their way through the Klein Karoo and making their way towards the Attakwas Kloof. In the women's race, a steady start had given way to an increase in tempo as the race neared the Outeniqua Mountains. Laura Stark was unable to maintain the pace. In the men's race, Philip Bass was the first rider over the summit to claim the King of the Mountains title. The Paiga Eurosteel riders were followed over the crest and into the Attakwas Kloof by Matt Beers, Wessel Botha and Nicole Carstens. Namibia's Tristan de Lange next over the top. At the front of the women's field, Jolandi de Villiers was ensuring the tempo remained high. The rocky climb, which had split the men's field, would prove decisive in the women's race too. After de Villiers had driven the pace in the build-up to it, Jenny Steenehaag went to the front on the ascent. The Swedish rider picked the best line possible and quickly opened up a slight advantage on the rest of the leading women's group. None of her rivals were able to match her peerless climbing.
It was almost like we had two different races today. It was dusty and dry in the Chandelier from the start, and then it was so muddy and rainy at the end. So it was almost like we had two different races. But it was a good race from the start. It was a small bunch of girls, but it was strong girls. So, on the first technical uphill, I managed to get a gap, and then Robin bridged over. So that was nice.
While Robin de Groot managed to bridge across, Jolandi de Villiers and Barbara Benko were left behind. Dormakawa's Amy McDougall had initially been aiding de Villiers and Benko in their attempted pursuit, but a catastrophic rear wheel puncture put her out of the race. After receiving help from a non-UCI women's rider, she was forced to withdraw. The best McDougall could do was to nurse her bike to water point 2. Ahead, Jenny Steenehaag led Robin de Groot through the Sonhof feed zone, followed by Barbara Benko, who had managed to distance Jolandi de Villiers ever so slightly. The rugged dual tracks towards the second water point are what has amateur riders training through December.
I like it because obviously the days are a lot longer, and I like to go exploring in December, and I always sort of try some new areas there back home in East London, the Transkei area, and sort of old border region, and that we've got so much stuff out there that every year I'm pretty much organising at least 3 or 4 new areas to go and ride, to go through farms and go and check things out. So for me, I try to keep it new and that, and I think that's what keeps me going. And I just love being out there for a long time on my bike and that. So.
The rough and rocky roads continued to exact their toll. Theresa Ralph also found herself plugging a puncture. For the amateur riders, reaching water point 2 was step 1 of the challenge completed. Located 42 kilometers into the race, it provided the opportunity to fuel for the assault on the remote Attakwas Kloof. Experienced regulars knew what awaited. The tracks got even rockier, and the inclement weather would make it cold in the high mountain pass. They were not daunted, however. Neither were the leading women, Jenny Steenehaag and Robin de Groot.
I had just come back from dropping a chain, so I chased back, and then when I saw Jen was off the front, I was kind of caught at the back, like you say, behind a couple of riders, and I think that's the move that you got to go with. So I put in a bit of an effort once I got to the top, just to try and close that gap and bridge. I thought Barbara and Jolandi would also follow, but looked like I did that little bridge on my own, and then from there, Jen and I were alone to the finish.
In third on the trail, Barbara Benko was forging further into the unknown. Behind her was one of the race's most experienced campaigners. And experience teaches that anything can happen in the Attakwas Kloof. Puncture in particular can change the race. And it did for Arne de Tooy of DSV, Jacques Jansen van Rensburg of First Move, and Imbuco Giants Nicole Carstens. Swede Michael Olsen was also making his debut. He overcame an early fall and was getting stronger as the race progressed. With Carstens for company, Olsen reeled in Sebastian Stark and Matthijs Bierkes, who had struggled through the Kloof. At the front of the race, Matt Beers was proving to be the form rider in the field. The NAD Pro MTB star was joined by Philip Bass, Wessel Botha, Tristan de Lange and Gert Haynes. Descending on the muddy roads was proving treacherous. In order to do so safely, even the elite men had to allow the rider ahead a slight gap. These gaps grew with each descent, which rolled into a climb and was followed instantaneously by another descent. After one such series of rolling hills, Tristan de Lange was unable to make contact with the group. This left the two NAD Pro MTB riders to race for the win, with Page Eurosteel's Philip Bass and DSV's Gert Haynes. De Lange, meanwhile, was forced to chase alone, knowing that there was more chance of being caught than there was of catching the leaders. The next group was closing in on the Namibian. It contained Nicole Karsten, Sebastian Stark, Michael Olsen and the defending champion Matthijs Bierkes.
As we hit Attakwas, I could start feeling like lower back problems coming into play, and yeah, soon I just had no power on the climbs, and yeah, I was out of the race. The front guys, yeah, it's all split up there, and I was out the back quite quickly. Yeah, as we started climbing out of Barneydale, I could start feeling my my back getting better and better, and by the time we were close to 8 bells, I was feeling 100%, and power came back, and yeah, I could just let it fly and actually surprised myself, and did a good comeback, of which I'm really proud.
Chasing on the rolling hills between 8 bells and Grootbrak is not easy. Being in a group is a definite advantage, but there came a time when Bierkes had to strike out alone. At the front, the group had split too. Philip Bass was in 4th on the road, just behind Gert Haynes in 3rd, who trailed Wessel Botha in 2nd. The young NAD rider had best try to match Matt Beers.
I think it's a really great race. I've heard a lot of horror stories about it, and I was a bit nervous before the start. But it's such an amazing race. Starting in the Karoo, going through Attakwas Kloof and finishing here close to George. It's just such a diverse terrain and such a good experience, and it's great for me starting to move into the longer races, getting some experience here. And yeah, for me it was just a great race, super tough but very rewarding once you finished.
Botha's teammate Matt Beers had blown the lead group apart with a savage acceleration.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised. I mean, my form is not fantastic, to be honest. I had to race very late into the year, until end of November. I pretty much just took 2 weeks off, and then I've only been training now for 4 weeks. So yeah, I'm surprised, and it's positive, because I know I've got a lot more to give and a lot more to train. So yeah, it's really great to know that everything's on track, and we still have a lot of room for improvement.
The tall man from Knysna rounded the final bend and crossed the finish line, muddy but elated. In doing so, Matt Beers became the 2020 Momentum Medical Scheme Attakwas Extreme presented by Biogen champion.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge win for me, for sure. I mean, this is pretty much one of my first proper mountain bike races of my career, and I always thought, geez, it would be amazing to win it, and yeah, somehow I managed to do it today in pretty gnarly conditions.
Matthijs Bierkes of Paiga Eurosteel recovered from his earlier issues to finish 2nd. He may have surrendered, but his gutsy ride will no doubt give him confidence for the rest of the season. NAD Pro MTB's 21-year-old Wessel Botha rounded out the podium, completing a stellar ride. In the 5 hours it took Matt Beers to reach the finish line, many of the amateurs were only just reaching the Attakwas Kloof. But while their days were undoubtedly longer, there can be equally little doubt as to who enjoyed the scenery more. Having ridden or walked up the climb, the riders were treated to pristine mountain fynbos views. In years when the weather is good, the vistas stretch far into the distance. But the low cloud kept the signs of civilization hidden in 2020. With no modern structures in sight, the riders could admire the Kloof as it would have been hundreds of years before, when it was first pioneered as a wagon trail from the coast into the Karoo. The history books suggest the early European adventurers traced a footpath used by the Khoi herders for centuries before, who had in turn followed the footprints of elephants through the mountains. In the women's race, there was no time for history lessons. There was a race to be won. All the while, Jenny Steenhaag and Robin de Groot were extending their advantage. Behind the leading duo, Hungarian Barbara Benko could accept no assistance from the riders around her.
Definitely, you don't want to be alone. So Jen and I think we kept a pretty steady pace. it was nice to have company. I mean, he's a good friend of mine, and yeah, it was better than being alone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had 2 years, actually more, 2.5 years, when we did every single stage race together and rode as a team in every race. So it was really nice to be alone with her and ride, not as a team, but obviously we were working together. So it was really nice to, and I was happy when I turned around to see that it was Robin that came over. So it was a nice day out.
I think I can do better, and now I know the route and what to expect. Actually, it's a really nice race, but it's like super hard and super tough. But yeah, the weather didn't help either, and the wind was crazy, and all direction there was just headwind. I don't know how is it possible, but it was headwind everywhere.
Yolandi de Villiers in 4th on the road, also unable to close the gap to Benko or the runaway leaders. For a second year in a row, the race came down to a sprint with Fairtree's Jenny Stennehaag edging out Domakawa's Robin de Groot to take the title. Barbara Benko crossed the line in 3rd after a solid debut performance. While Yolandi de Villiers finished 4th as she continued her recovery from a serious broken leg. The Momentum medical scheme Attakwas Extreme, presented by Biogen, is more than a mountain bike race. It takes 1,000 riders into a wilderness in the heart of the Southern Cape. It showcases the beauty of 4 diverse regions: the arid plain Karoo, the changeable high mountains, the forests of the foothills, and the pastures of the coastal plain. It challenges riders to train through December, to forego that extra slice of Christmas cake, and to get up early to ride. It tests man, woman and machine equally, posing questions of tyre choices, line choices and life choices. For many, it'll be the toughest race of the year, an early benchmark for the season to come, a chance to lay down a marker, to plant a flag on a metaphorical mountain peak. It asks, can you survive the Attakwas?
Yeah, look, December is always a difficult time to train, especially if you have kids, but I've learned over time that with the Attakwas, even if you're fit, you still suffer and you still cramp, and if you're unfit you also suffer and you cramp. So we just ride it because the Attakwas, everything is special, you know. Dryland Adventure are special, the water points are special, the people are special, and I mean the Attakwas Kloof is one of the most picturesque places that you will ever see on your bike. So the real question should be, how can you miss it?
It's tough, but it's brilliant, eh? Wind from the back in the start, but I think we're going to hit it from the front now.
It's going well, eh? A little tumble, we've had a little fall, so we're good. Feeling good, feeling good. Now at least we've got this horrible part over. We can move on. Thanks, Bio. Awesome.
Overcoming obstacles is as essential in surviving the Attakwas as it is in life. But as in life, the race is not just about suffering too. There is camaraderie to be found on the route from Chandelier to Pine Creek. And there is an undeniable beauty in the wilderness, giving those who take the time to appreciate it just reward. There are reasons to smile aplenty, like technical descents which require one's absolute focus. Overcoming the odds is made easier by Dryland's famous water points. Oases of warmth and nourishment, they provide more than Biogen race fuels. Though even for the slowest riders, a gel in case of emergency is always a good precaution, pocketed for later when a tough climb looms and energy is fading. The trick is not to be lured into resting for too long. Riders have to tear themselves from the fireside and continue the grind towards Grootbrak, battling the relentless rolling roads which insist on descending repeatedly from plateau to the rivers like the Moordkuil Rivier far below. At the finish line, friends and family members eagerly await the return of their riders, waiting patiently in the rain to cheer them across the line to celebrate their success. For simply completing the Hell of the South is worthy of celebration. Celebrations and food, pancakes and spur burgers. While they indulged in post-race treats too, for the podium finishers there were celebrations on stage. And the cheers of their compatriots as the crowd acknowledged the achievement of conquering the course so quickly. Due in no small part to the weather, Matt Beers was the only rider to break the 5-hour barrier in 2020. Matthijs Beerkes missed the mark by 6.5 agonising minutes. Thereafter, the time gaps were smaller. There was no record time for first-time winner Jenny Steenenhaag either, but she was unconcerned. The important number was the second, which separated her from Robin de Groot. Unseasonal weather and a rugged route challenged the 2020 field to survive the Attakwas. And survive they did. With the experience behind them, every other challenge the year might bring on the bike will appear achievable. The calendar's toughest day ticked off in January at the Momentum Medical Scheme Attakwas Extreme, presented by Biogen.